Hey guys, tonight we're pouring ourselves a stiff drink. Don't worry. The doctor says it's fine, and slipping into the wild world of 1950s American housewives. If you've ever stared at a pile of laundry and thought, I need a vacation or maybe a tranquilizer, you are in the right place. Because tonight, we're exploring that magical decade when every doctor looked like your Uncle Bob. Every home had an ashtray in every room, and every housewife was about 3 prescription pills away from founding Pink Floyd. So before you get too comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe. But only if you actually enjoy this little descent into historical absurdity. Drop a comment telling me your favorite over-the-counter cure for nerves. Or just let me know what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, put a fan on for that sweet vintage white noise, and maybe curl up under an electric blanket that's probably a fire hazard. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered, how did people survive before mindfulness apps? Did 1950s housewives really vacuum in pearls? Why did everyone's mom have a bottle of Nerve tonic hidden next to the casserole recipe? Could you actually function with 3 kids, a Tupperware party, and enough barbiturates to tranquilize a horse? Did doctors really hand out amphetamines and sedatives like Tic Tacs? Would you last a single week in a society that told you to smile more, wear lipstick, and just take something for those feelings? And now, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1955. Somewhere in suburban America. There's Jell-O in the fridge, martinis at lunch, and your doctor's about to solve all your problems with a prescription pad and a knowing wink. You open your eyes to the smell of instant coffee, bacon grease, and the distant sound of Perry Como on the radio. It's the 1950s. Your pajamas are pressed. Your children are already sticky with jam. And you're about to clean a house that's cleaner than your conscience. Your day begins not with yoga, but with a to-do list that could stun a draft horse and a little something the doctor gave you for your nerves. The sunlight sneaks in through pastel curtains, and you blink away dreams of freedom. Maybe Paris. Maybe just a silent room. Instead, you're met with Formica countertops, avocado green appliances, and a calendar that tells you exactly who you are. Homemaker, mother, wife, expert in removing stains and pretending everything is perfectly fine. The house is quiet, but not for long. Soon, you'll hear the stampede of small feet, the tragic squelch of spilled orange juice, and a husband shouting something about running late. The dog is already barking at the mailman. The mailman is probably running from your dog, or from the existential dread that comes from delivering overdue bills to every house on the block. You shuffle to the kitchen in slippers that have seen better days, maybe before the war. The coffee is strong, the bacon is crisp, and the radio DJ is cheerier than anyone should be before 7 a.m. Your kids demand cereal, your husband demands his tie, and you demand 5 minutes alone with your thoughts and a small white pill that claims to make mornings manageable. This is your life now. A balancing act on the thin edge of order and chaos, held together by routine, lipstick, and government-approved pharmaceuticals. Breakfast is not so much a meal as a performance. You serve scrambled eggs with one hand, wipe jam from cheeks with the other, and field questions about algebra homework and the location of clean socks. Your own toast goes cold, but that's just the natural order of things. If you're lucky, you get a swig of coffee before the next crisis erupts. The world expects a smile, so you practice it in the chrome toaster's reflection. Sometimes it looks convincing. Outside, the world is a Norman Rockwell painting. White picket fences, freshly mowed lawns, neighbors who wave and judge in equal measure. But inside your mind, the list of worries is long. Did you defrost the roast? Are the kids' shoes polished? Did you remember to pick up the prescription for nerves? Or will you have to fib your way through another afternoon? You scribble notes on a pad by the phone, a running tally of appointments, groceries, and reminders to look happy at the next PTA meeting. At least the cat listens to your complaints. even if it's just because you're holding a can opener. Every surface in your home shines. But you're not fooled. You know dirt is patient. It lurks under beds and behind curtains, waiting for the next housewife inspection or surprise visit from your mother-in-law. Dusting becomes a kind of meditation, a way to convince yourself that you have control over something, anything. The vacuum is your loyal steed, its roar drowning out the hum of intrusive thoughts. Sometimes, you wonder if you're vacuuming out of necessity or just to muffle your own anxiety. The television promises you the good life if you just buy the right soap, wear the right dress, and serve the right dessert. You, too, can be the perfect wife and mother, the commercials insist. But you know perfection is a moving target, one that's always just out of reach. No matter how many times you rearrange the living room or re-iron your husband's shirts. Still, you chase it. After all, what else can you do in a world where ambition is measured in spotless windows and the number of casseroles you can bake from a single can of cream of mushroom soup? By the time the clock strikes 9, you've already conquered a mountain of chores, dispensed 3 life lessons, and possibly considered running away to join the circus. But instead, you take a breath, straighten your collar, and swallow another mother's little helper, hoping it takes the edge off the day ahead. This is the 1950s, and you're a housewife, held together by hairspray, habit, and hope that maybe tomorrow will feel a little lighter. Forget avocado toast. In the 1950s, breakfast is black coffee, cornflakes, and maybe a menthol cigarette before the kids wake up. You scan the morning paper while contemplating whether to pop your first tranquilizer of the day, prescribed as needed, which, let's be honest, is every day ending in Y. You pour yourself a bowl of cereal, and it sounds like a gravel driveway. The box promises it will make your children strong and your life easy, but you're pretty sure it just tastes like existential panic with extra sugar. Across the kitchen, sunlight glints off the chrome, bouncing off canisters labeled flour, sugar, and emotional stability. You glance at the coffee pot, a relic of wartime endurance, bubbling with the weak optimism of instant grounds. No fancy French press here, just a battered percolator that spits and hisses like it's holding a grudge. You strike a match for your morning cigarette. The ritual is calming, and also, according to every ad in every magazine, totally doctor-approved. Your ashtray is built into the kitchen counter. The smell of smoke mingles with bacon grease, and the faintest note of perfume, like a culinary crime scene. You flip the paper to the society section, where smiling women show off the latest in kitchen appliances and perfectly starched aprons. The headlines are cheerful, the world is orderly, and no one is talking about the fact that half the neighborhood is running on coffee and codeine. The clock strikes 7, and the peace shatters. Children thunder into the kitchen, a blur of bedhead and sticky hands. Someone is already fighting over the last clean spoon. You barely notice. You're distracted, counting pills in your head and toying with the idea of washing them down with orange juice. Mother's little helper is the unspoken guest at every meal. The bottle is in the cupboard, labeled with a name you can't pronounce, and a warning to avoid operating heavy machinery. You decide the vacuum doesn't count. Breakfast in the 1950s is a group project, but the group is mostly under 6 and unqualified. You spoon cereal into mouths, referee arguments, and dodge the occasional flying toast crust. Your husband appears, fully dressed for work, demanding coffee and the whereabouts of his briefcase. He offers a peck on the cheek, oblivious to the storm of breakfast logistics and the fact that you've been up for an hour, cleaning, planning, and running on nothing but caffeine, nicotine, and the vague promise of peace of mind. You sneak a glance at your neighbor's house across the street. She's already in full makeup, her hair set in rollers the size of soup cans, waving at the milkman. You wonder if she's had her first pill of the day, or if she's just naturally that calm. The pressure to be perfect is heavy, even at sunrise. The magazines say breakfast is the most important meal of the day. But the subtext is clear. So is keeping it together. You catch your reflection in the toaster. You look fine. Not glamorous, not tragic. Just tired. The phone rings, and it's your friend Mildred calling to swap casserole recipes and compare which doctor gives the best calmers. You both laugh, but there's an edge to it. An unspoken understanding that everyone's balancing on the same precarious wire, one nervous breakdown away from putting the Hoover in the garage and just walking away. By the time the last bowl is rinsed, the paper is read, and the kids are bundled off to school, you feel the familiar tug of fatigue, a tiredness so deep it lives somewhere behind your eyes. You slip the pill bottle into your apron pocket. A secret companion as you face down another day of spotless counters and impossible expectations. Breakfast is over, but the performance is just beginning. The house is quiet for a moment, and you let yourself exhale. For a few precious seconds, you're just you, alone in the kitchen, with nothing but the soft crackle of the radio and the echo of 1,000 silent hopes. And maybe, just maybe, another cup of coffee before round 2. It's time to conquer the household with your trusty Hoover, a cocktail of barbiturates, and an apron that doubles as body armor. Between the dishes, the dusting, and your third load of laundry before noon, you wonder if the real reason for the daily sedative is your talking washing machine, which might be a hallucination. You start with dishes, because in the 1950s, dishwashers are rarer than honest politicians. The sink is a mountain range of ceramic and cutlery, all balanced precariously and threatening to collapse if you so much as look at it sideways. The water is either scalding or icy, no in between, and you use more elbow grease than actual soap, scrubbing each plate with the kind of dedication usually reserved for crime scene cleanups. The radio hums with cheerful jingles about how clean is next to godly, but no one ever mentions the chipped nails, the dishpan hands, or the unholy smell of whatever died in the garbage disposal. After the dishes, you move on to the floors. The vacuum is heavier than most toddlers and twice as noisy. You wrestle it across a sea of pastel linoleum and floral rugs, dodging stray marbles, dog hair, and a half-eaten graham cracker that's somehow fossilized to the baseboard. Every advertisement says it's easy enough for any woman, but your shoulders are already burning and you're sweating through your best house dress. You make a mental note to write a stern letter to whoever invented spring cleaning, because frankly, you'd rather take your chances with winter. Laundry is its own Olympic sport. The washing machine shakes so violently you have to brace yourself against the countertop, hoping it doesn't take out the wall. Again, whites, colors, delicates, towels, everything sorted and cycled like you're running a very cranky laundromat. Bleach fumes sting your nose. The fresh scent on the box is a lie. Sometimes you imagine the washing machine is speaking to you in Morse code, tapping out desperate pleas for retirement. You know exactly how it feels. Then there's dusting. Everything in the house collects dust. Picture frames, TV sets, even the plastic slipcovers on the furniture, which are there to protect, but mostly just squeak whenever anyone sits down. You attack each surface with a rag, chasing away the little grey reminders that perfection is a moving target. Sometimes you daydream about letting it all pile up, starting a new life as the mysterious dust lady of Elm Street. But you know the neighbors would call the sanitation department, or worse, your mother-in-law. Sprinkled between these main events are 1,000 tiny battles. Mopping up mysterious sticky patches, picking toys out of the radiator, sewing buttons onto shirts that seem to explode off the minute someone breathes. The children are everywhere and nowhere, leaving trails of crumbs, lost socks, and existential despair in their wake. At some point you find a crayon mural behind the couch that could probably get its own gallery show, and you make a mental note to add repainting the living room to your ever-expanding list. Throughout it all, you try to keep smiling, because the magazines say a cheerful attitude is the secret ingredient to a happy home. You hum along to Perry Como. You rearrange the tulips in the vase for the third time. And you resist the urge to scream into a pillow. By noon, you've run 5 miles inside the house and achieved exactly nothing that will still be clean by 3 p.m. You pop another calmer, tie your apron a little tighter, and march bravely back into the fray. Because in the 1950s, housework isn't just a job, it's a lifestyle. And you're its star employee, working for the world's stingiest boss, entropy. Everyone's peeking through the curtains. Your neighbors are competing for the title of least chaotic family, and you're playing along, even though you just caught your youngest eating crayons. Better take another mother's little helper before anyone finds out your casserole is store-bought. You'd think suburban life would come with a sense of community, a team spirit forged in the fires of matching mailboxes and mutual lawn-mowing obligations. But in reality, every block is a battleground, one where the only ammunition is gossip, and the front lines are lined with rose bushes and perfectly trimmed hedges. The air is thick with the scent of gardenias, cigarette smoke, and the silent anxiety that someone, somewhere, might see your recycling bin on the curb on the wrong day. Stepping outside to fetch the newspaper, you feel the collective gaze of a dozen housewives and at least 2 retired colonels. You wave, too enthusiastic, and you look unhinged, too reserved, and you're not friendly. The neighbor across the street, Mrs. Edwards, gives you her signature tight-lipped smile, the one that says, "I vacuum daily and my children have never eaten a non-food item in their lives." Meanwhile, her garden gnome is missing a hat, and her dog is rumored to have a gambling problem. Everyone has something to hide. As you pass the Jeffersons' driveway, you hear the telltale click of blinds snapping shut. The neighborhood watch is always on duty, and the only crimes are untidy flower beds and unapproved shades of siding. You try to keep up appearances, sweeping the porch, picking up stray toys, and arranging your front door wreath so it angles just so for anyone walking by. Even your doormat is in on the act. Welcome, but not too welcome. Your children know the drill. They're in clean clothes, scrubbed faces, and absolutely forbidden from playing with water hoses or, heaven forbid, painting rocks in the front yard. Their job is to look like tiny catalogue models at all times. It's an impossible standard, especially since your youngest just invented a game called Mud Olympics. You keep a stack of emergency cookies for unplanned visits, store-bought, but transferred to a Tupperware with plausible deniability. The gossip grapevine is as well tended as the azaleas. Did you hear that the Hendersons argued about the electric bill? Or that the new family on Maple Lane lets their children eat dinner in front of the TV? Scandalous. You listen politely, nodding at the appropriate moments, and privately vow to never let anyone see your own kitchen after spaghetti night. Sharing personal failings is strictly for confessions or therapists, neither of which are in fashion. Every day is a fresh performance. The lawn must be mowed diagonally for extra credit. The trash must be out before sunrise, or you risk whispers about standards slipping. And heaven help you if you forget to return a borrowed cup of sugar within 48 hours. That's how feuds start. You become a master at staging accidental run-ins, offering your best pearls and lipstick smile, and casually mentioning your latest triumph in casserole design. Underneath it all is a low-level tension, a pressure cooker of expectation. Even your houseplants know they're being watched, drooping in solidarity when the neighbors comment on your tricky lighting. The competition is relentless, but no one will admit it. It's all so nice to see you, and your roses look lovely this year, spoken through gritted teeth and a smile stretched tighter than your girdle. And so, armed with a tray of slightly burnt brownies and a dose of pharmaceutical courage, you make the rounds. You nod, you smile, you endure. The neighborhood watch may be wearing pearls and cardigans, but they're as ruthless as any Cold War spy ring. Your mission: survive another day without making the bulletin board for most suspiciously shabby lawn. Just remember, appearances are everything, secrets are universal, and the only thing scarier than being talked about is not being talked about at all. Afternoon socializing means inviting over other housewives to discuss recipes, PTA drama, and which doctor gives the best refills. You offer a slice of banana bread and a subtle nudge toward your pillbox, because in the 1950s, sharing is caring, and so is low-level pharmaceutical dependency. The doorbell rings right on schedule, 2 p.m. The official start of suburban social hour. You do a quick scan of the living room. Magazines fanned out artfully on the coffee table, ashtray emptied. Not a single dust bunny in sight. You answer the door with a smile that says, "Of course my house looks like this all the time." Your guests arrive in pastel dresses, hair set like a helmet, lipstick fresh, each carrying a dish to pass, and an air of slightly suppressed desperation. The greeting ritual is as choreographed as any Broadway show. Coats go on the guest bed, purses tucked discreetly beside them, and then it's straight to the kitchen for coffee poured into cups so dainty you could drown a mouse in them, but not much else. Someone always brings coffee cake, and you pretend you don't notice it's from the store. You slice your own banana bread, carefully avoiding the part that looks a little experimental, and offer it up with a whisper, "You simply must try this, doctor's orders." Conversation flows as easily as the Sanka. It starts with the basics: children's report cards, casserole competitions, and whether Mrs. Johnson's new perm is actually becoming, or just a cry for help. But as the afternoon sunlight fades and the second round of coffee is poured, the talk turns to what really matters: nerves, fatigue, and which doctor will write a prescription for anything if you ask nicely enough. Mildred boasts that Dr. Harris gave her a new energy tonic. Barbara swears by her evening relaxant. You all exchange knowing glances over the rim of your cups, as if you're in an exclusive club, one where the password is the chemical formula for diazepam. Your pillbox, decorated with delicate flowers, sits quietly on the counter, half hidden behind a sugar bowl. It's not unusual for someone to nudge it forward, as if offering mints. "Would you like one?" you ask, just above a whisper, and nobody is ever quite sure if you mean cake, cigarettes, or something a little more calming. One friend accepts with a grateful nod, tucking a tablet into her purse with all the secrecy of a Cold War spy passing secret documents. You swap favorite doctors like trading cards. He's a little stingy with the good stuff. Oh, you have to tell him about your headaches. Works every time. Of course, you all pretend you're there just for the company, but the subtext is always the same. Sometimes, being a housewife is hard, and sometimes the best therapy is a hot cup of coffee, a sympathetic ear, and a pharmaceutical pep talk. The laughter gets a little too loud, the cake gets a little too crumbly, and for a brief moment, you're all in it together, sisters in arms against monotony, expectation, and the crushing responsibility of never letting the cracks show. Someone brings up the PTA fundraiser, and suddenly everyone has opinions, solutions, and stories about last year's deviled egg incident. The conversation turns rowdy, and you catch yourself thinking that this is the best you'll feel all week. For a fleeting hour, you are more than just a housewife. You are a friend, a confidant, a trusted keeper of secrets, both sweet and slightly sedated. When the clock strikes 3, your guests rise, smoothing their skirts, reapplying lipstick, and tucking loose strands of hair back under their scarves. There are hugs at the door, promises to share recipes, and reminders to take care of yourself. As you wave goodbye, the house feels a little emptier, a little quieter, and you're left with just a half-eaten cake, some lipstick on your coffee cups, and the warm afterglow of camaraderie, with a gentle pharmaceutical finish. You visit Dr. Bob, who looks concerned about your tiredness, anxiety, and general existence. His cure, A prescription for something that sounds like a crossword puzzle answer. He says, just take one whenever the kids get loud. Spoiler, the kids are always loud. The waiting room smells like antiseptic, perfume samples, and whatever cologne Dr. Bob marinated in this morning. You flip through a magazine full of smiling women vacuuming in cocktail dresses, each article insisting that exhaustion is merely a matter of inner attitude and maybe switching to a different brand of gelatin. You sit between two other housewives, both clutching handbags full of secrets and slowly unraveling optimism. Nobody makes eye contact. It's an unspoken rule. We all know why we're here. When the nurse finally calls your name, you stand up like you're accepting an Oscar, gracious, poised, and powered by sheer desperation. Dr. Bob's office is a shrine to mid-century medical confidence. Dark wood paneling, framed diplomas, and a giant anatomical chart of a nervous system that could honestly be labeled "You are here." He greets you with a warm smile and an ashtray overflowing with cigarettes. He doesn't ask if you smoke, he assumes you do. So, he begins, crossing one leg over the other, like, "This is a talk show. Tell me what's been troubling you." You describe your sleepless nights, the endless chores, the screaming children, the neighborhood politics, the pressure to be perfect, the laundry that never ends. In the middle of your explanation, he nods sympathetically but also checks his watch. He's heard this story 900 times this month, and the solution is always the same: chemistry. He taps his prescription pad with the enthusiasm of a magician about to pull a rabbit out of a hat. "Sounds like nerves," he concludes. Nerves being the 1950s catch-all diagnosis for everything from burnout to boredom to the crushing weight of societal expectations. "I'll give you something to smooth out the edges." He scribbles on the pad like he's signing an autograph, tears the slip free, and hands it to you with the paternal pride of someone offering a lollipop. The name on the bottle will be 15 syllables long, impossible to pronounce, and mildly alarming. But Dr. Bob assures you it's perfectly safe, thoroughly modern, and ideal for women in your situation, which is a polite way of saying alive. You muster the courage to ask if there are any side effects. He waves a hand dismissively, perhaps a bit of drowsiness or wakefulness, maybe a little jitters or calmness or a mild sense of floating. Nothing unusual. You nod, because floating honestly sounds better than folding laundry. He gives you an entire speech about balancing your hormones, despite the fact that modern science will one day reveal he didn't know what hormones actually did. He recommends rest, and suggests finding a hobby, as long as the hobby doesn't interfere with dinner, cleaning, parenting, carpooling, ironing, or breathing correctly in front of the neighbors. Checkout is simple. You stop at the reception desk, where Miss Beverly files everything with the efficiency of a Cold War codebreaker. She slips you a sample pack just to hold you over, her voice soft and conspiratorial, as though handing you diamonds. You tuck the sample into your purse next to your lipstick and the emergency cookies. On the drive home, the prescription rides shotgun. You feel relieved, hopeful, and slightly amused by how fast the appointment went. You barely had time to sit down before the drugs began materializing. It's like fast food, but for mental health. And as you pull into your driveway, you spot your kids running around the yard, screaming as though competing in some kind of amateur opera competition. You smile, clutch the little slip of paper, and think, well, at least Dr. Bob believes in me. Or in pharmaceuticals. Either way, help is on the way. Tomorrow, you'll fill the prescription. Tonight, you just keep the car running a little longer. For the air conditioning, of course. And maybe for your sanity. Uppers in the morning, downers at night. It's the ultimate chemical roller coaster, and your doctor is the ride operator. Need to clean the garage? Benzedrine. Need to sleep after thinking about the Cold War for 4 hours? Seconal. Congratulations. You are now both the tortoise and the hare. You wake up groggy and reach for the orange pill bottle before your feet even hit the shag carpet. This isn't just a morning routine. It's an act of chemical choreography. You swallow an amphetamine tablet with your first cup of instant coffee, feeling the promise of get up and go seeping into your veins before the radio announcer has even finished the weather report. By the time you've poured the kids' cereal and burned your toast, your heart is beating at the tempo of a mambo, and you're ready to scrub every surface in the house, whether it's dirty or not. The pep pills are a godsend, at least according to every magazine ad, your doctor, and 3 out of 4 of your closest friends. The secret is out. Mothers everywhere are running the house, volunteering for every bake sale, and teaching Sunday school, all thanks to their new miracle motivators. The side effects, you tell yourself, are just the price of progress. Sure, your hands shake when you fold the laundry and sometimes you reorganize the spice rack 3 times before lunch, but nobody can accuse you of being lazy. By noon, you've vacuumed every room twice, alphabetized the pantry, and caught up on all the neighborhood gossip twice. There's a strange sensation of triumph and terror in the air, like you could either conquer Rome or have a meltdown over a crooked lampshade. But there's no time for reflection. You're on a schedule, and the schedule is powered by pharmaceutical optimism. After lunch, there's an inevitable crash, the kind that lands you flat on the sofa, staring blankly at the ceiling fan as it spins and spins, mirroring the wheels in your head. Your body is wired, your mind is tired, and the kids are somehow still bouncing off the walls, blissfully immune to the tides of exhaustion that come for grown-ups. You think about taking a nap, but napping is for the weak, or at least for people who aren't running on doctor's orders. Instead, you make another pot of coffee and wonder how on earth you're supposed to unwind when the neighbor's dog won't stop barking, and the news keeps reminding you about Sputnik and fallout shelters. Enter the evening solution. Barbiturates, your nighttime lullaby in a capsule. Your doctor's instructions are clear. Just 1 little pill, 30 minutes before bedtime, and you'll be floating off to dreamland before Perry Como finishes the second chorus. You slip it under your tongue, brush your teeth, and slip into bed, waiting for the gentle embrace of oblivion. Sleep comes in waves, sometimes deep, sometimes thin and uneasy. You dream in black and white, sometimes in technicolor, sometimes not at all. Either way, you wake up in the morning groggy, tongue thick, mind foggy, and ready to repeat the process. Sometimes you compare notes with other housewives over bridge or coffee. Everyone has their favorite flavor. These are great for chores. Those are best for in-laws. This one will put you out cold after an argument with the husband. You swap tips the way other people trade cookie recipes. Nobody questions the wisdom of chasing sunrise with speed and sunset with sedatives, because the alternative is admitting that maybe, just maybe, the problem isn't your nerves at all. And so you ride the roller coaster, up, down, up again, driven by the logic of the era and the quiet reassurance that, at the very least, you're not the only one clutching a prescription bottle with equal parts gratitude and resignation. In the 1950s, wonder drugs are everywhere, and everyone's along for the ride. Lunch isn't complete without a drink or two. You and the girls hit the midday slump with a cocktail and a wink, making sure to balance the gin with a vitamin tablet, a sandwich, and the existential dread that comes from being told your main job is smiling. In the 1950s, the martini lunch is less of a luxury and more of a survival mechanism. By noon, you've already negotiated a peace treaty between feuding siblings, fielded a telemarketer's pitch for aluminum siding, and scrubbed crayon art off the living room wall for the 3rd time this week. So when the clock strikes 12, you shed your apron, fluff your hair, and invite the girls over for what is officially lunch, but unofficially a group therapy session lubricated by gin. You set the table with your best floral napkins, the good glassware, the ones that haven't been through the war with the dishwasher, and a platter of finger sandwiches cut into shapes that could win a geometry prize. As the doorbell rings, you swipe on a fresh layer of lipstick and hide the pillbox in your purse, just in case anyone needs a chaser for their martini. Everyone arrives in a whirl of pastel, perfume, and gossip. The conversation starts light. What's for dinner? Which child has the weird rash? Whose dog escaped again? But it quickly takes on the familiar tone of commiseration. Someone pours the first round. The ice clinks cheerfully, and the mood softens like butter on a summer sidewalk. One sip in, and the confessions start. Honestly, I'd trade my left shoe for a day of silence. Or, is it wrong to wish for a week in the hospital just for a little rest? Nobody bats an eye. The martini glass is a passport to honesty. You all share the unspoken understanding that the cocktail isn't really about the drink. It's about stealing back an hour from the grind of perfection. It's a ritual, an oasis in the desert of domesticity, a way to make peace with the fact that some days your only adult conversation is with the pharmacist. Some ladies go for a classic gin martini. Others experiment with whatever new recipe was in last month's Good Housekeeping. Perhaps a pink lady or a golden Cadillac. Drinks that sound like racehorses but go down smooth. Someone always toasts to health, which everyone interprets as to keeping it together for one more afternoon. For a brief, shimmering moment, you're all laughing too loud, sharing stories you'd never tell at the PTA, and poking fun at husbands who wouldn't last a day in these heels. Lunch itself is a spread worthy of admiration. Deviled eggs, ham salad, gel, with suspicious fruit, and at least one dish that came from the back of a soup can. Plates are passed, compliments are exchanged, and nobody asks who made what from scratch. In between bites, you pop a vitamin for show, and maybe something else, subtly, quietly, the way you saw your mother do it back when restless nerves was code for, I can't take this anymore. As the afternoon slips by, the mood swings between giddy and reflective. You talk about dreams, Paris, Broadway, or just a weekend alone at the motor lodge. There's laughter, and sometimes a shimmer of tears, quickly blinked away and replaced with a joke about running away to join the circus. Nobody's really running, though. You all know this is just the daily dance, the mid-century minuet of having it all with a little help from Dr. Bob and a solid pour of gin. By the time everyone gathers their handbags and heads for the door, the spell breaks. You wave goodbye, gather empty glasses, and let out a breath you didn't realize you'd been holding. The house feels quieter, the sun a little lower in the sky. You've survived another day, and with any luck, you'll remember the sandwich recipe and forget about the existential dread. At least until tomorrow's lunch. You're hosting a Tupperware party, which is basically group therapy in disguise. Everyone shows up smiling, leaves with a burpable bowl, and secretly wishes the punch had a little more punch. Salesmanship and social anxiety. Both are easier with a tablet or two. You start the day with a cleaning frenzy, dusting corners you forgot existed and rearranging knickknacks so the living room looks less lived in and more house in a magazine. You want the illusion to hold, at least until the last guest arrives. The coffee table is set with dainty napkins and a spread of snacks worthy of a PTA bake-off. Cheese balls, celery sticks filled with something suspiciously luminous, and the kind of Jell-O mold that looks like it came from a classified Cold War lab. One by one, your friends file in, carrying a casserole or a nervous energy or both. Everyone wears their Sunday best, pressed skirts, pearls, hair sprayed into gravity-defying shapes, because if you're going to buy overpriced food storage, you might as well do it looking like you're headed to tea with the Queen. There are hugs at the door, quick air kisses, and careful glances to make sure the pie is homemade and the heels are not from last season. Your kitchen table has been transformed into a battlefield of plastic. Brightly colored bowls, stacking cups, lids that burp, and an array of gadgets nobody quite understands but everyone pretends to need. The Tupperware lady stands at the head of the table. smiling with the kind of manic confidence that only comes from memorizing a 20-minute sales pitch and possibly sampling the contents of her own secret stash. She launches into her routine, extolling the virtues of airtight seals and modular organization, all while demonstrating how to flip a bowl upside down without losing a single deviled egg. You sit, smile, and nod, the model hostess. But beneath the surface, the real event is unfolding. Everyone is watching everyone else. Who's buying the most? Who looks most impressed? Who's drinking their punch a little too fast? You pass around the party favors, miniature spatulas and pastel measuring cups, and field whispered questions about your own relaxation techniques. It turns out Tupperware is only one kind of container being swapped at these gatherings. The afternoon quickly shifts from sales pitch to support group. After the first round of punch, just sweet enough to hide the taste of nerves, the conversation turns honest. One woman confides that she hides her energy pills in the flour canister. Another jokes about trading a stack of lids for just one good night's sleep. There's laughter, louder and more genuine than you hear at most church socials, and a shared sense that, at least here, you're not the only one faking calm. The sales part of the party happens almost by accident. Everyone orders something, mostly out of guilt or the hope that a new set of matching containers will somehow bring order to the chaos of life. You place your own order for the family pack, which, according to the catalogue, can hold enough leftovers to feed a small army or at least keep your husband's midnight snacking from becoming a forensic investigation. As the party winds down, the Tupperware lady tallies her sales, promising prizes and discounts that no one ever really receives. Friends linger in the kitchen, sipping the last of the punch and swapping tips on stain removal and best pharmacies for prescriptions. You all agree that you really must do this more often, knowing full well the next gathering will involve just as much pretending and probably twice as much plastic. When the last guest leaves, and you're left in the quiet with your new tower of storage containers, you realize the Tupperware party wasn't really about leftovers at all. It was about connection, commiseration, and finding a little order, burped and sealed, amid the relentless sprawl of suburban life. It's time for your beauty routine. Cold cream, curlers, and a face mask made of hope. Magazines promise you'll look refreshed if you just use this miracle cream, plus whatever's in that little orange bottle from the pharmacy. It's self-care, 1950s style. The clock strikes a merciless hour. Maybe early morning, maybe midnight, and you find yourself standing in front of the bathroom mirror, armed with an arsenal of lotions, powders, and enough bobby pins to construct a small radio tower. You begin with the ritual application of cold cream, smearing it over tired skin with the sort of reverence that should be reserved for sacred ceremonies. The scent is nostalgic, a mix of grandmotherly comfort and subtle panic. It promises to remove all traces of fatigue, worry, and evidence that you just spent the last 10 minutes crying quietly into a hand towel. Next come the curlers, each one rolled and pinned into place with the precision of a bomb technician. Your hair must look effortless, which in the 1950s means a full hour of negotiation with your scalp and enough setting lotion to waterproof a canoe. You try to ignore the fact that the magazines show models whose hair defies both gravity and logic. You smile at your reflection, lips outlined and filled according to an instructional chart taped to the medicine cabinet. You attempt the classic coral look, but end up somewhere between mid-century siren and clown on a windy day. Still, points for effort. Now comes the face mask, a chalky concoction that hardens into a crust reminiscent of the Mojave Desert. It's supposed to draw out impurities, though it mostly draws out existential dread. You leaf through a glossy beauty magazine as it dries, admiring the impossibly smooth skin of movie stars and reading about how wellness can be achieved through a balanced diet, vigorous exercise, and an unspoken contract with a local pharmacist. The article on beauty sleep is particularly cruel. Considering the last good night's rest, you had involved a post-surgical sedative and a week at your mother's house. You work your way through the rest of the regimen, dab astringent on your temples, brush your eyebrows into symmetrical submission, and pat powder along your jawline until your face could withstand a hurricane. The magazines insist that a flawless complexion is just a matter of dedication and, let's be honest, money and genetics. They say nothing about the fine art of concealing exhaustion with foundation, or the beauty hack of using sunglasses to hide the fact that you stayed up worrying about whether the roast is still defrosting in the sink. The medicine cabinet itself is a testament to the decade's priorities. A jumble of rouge, toothpaste, hairspray, and, nestled quietly at the back, the little orange bottle. Tonight, you pop a tranquilizer with your vitamin C, because even relaxation comes with a prescription. Mother's Little Helper doesn't show up in the beauty section, but everyone knows it's the real secret to the fresh and rested look. At least for the 5 minutes before your next wave of worry. Once your face mask flakes and your curlers have achieved the desired level of discomfort, you change into a satin robe or a tattered housecoat, depending on the laundry situation, and rejoin the world, newly fortified for whatever comes next. Your husband, already dozing in his chair, glances up and says, "You look nice, dear." You catch your reflection in the window. Not quite magazine. Perfect, but not too far off either. Especially in the forgiving glow of lamplight and mild sedation. Because in the 1950s, beauty isn't just a routine, it's a shield, a coping mechanism, and sometimes a group activity. Whether you're prepping for a PTA meeting or just another Tuesday, you do it all with a brave face, a handful of curlers, and a dab of hope, plus a little something extra, just to keep up appearances. 5 o'clock sharp. You throw on a fresh dress, fix your lipstick, and try to look well rested, even though you've been running on nerves and Nembutal. The roast is in the oven, the kids are scrubbed. The only thing not ready is your soul. You hear the familiar crunch of tires in the driveway, followed by the heavy slam of a car door. The daily announcement that father is home. You take a deep breath, smooth your hair, and do a quick sweep of the living room for any stray toys, crumbs, or signs of reality. Your children line up in a row, looking like tiny draft picks for the Cleanest Offspring Award, each one slightly twitchy from being threatened with no dessert if they dare smear jam on their shirt before dinner. The kitchen is a flurry of last-minute adjustments. You turn down the radio. Nobody needs to know you were dancing to Elvis in your socks an hour ago, and give the roast one last hopeful basting. The table is set with the good china, a matching set of silverware, and a floral centerpiece that's mostly wilted but, like you, still standing. There's a Jell-O mold trembling in the fridge and mashed potatoes whipped into submission. As your husband enters, you greet him with a practiced smile. He offers a tired peck on the cheek, drops his briefcase by the door, and asks, "So, how was your day?" A question that sounds suspiciously like a quiz. You deliver your summary. Children were good, house was quiet, dinner is almost ready. Leaving out the details about the laundry flood, the broken plate, the existential spiral in the pantry, and the pharmaceutical break you took between mopping and mediating a crayon-based sibling dispute. He sits in his favorite chair, newspaper in hand, becoming the living room's largest piece of decor. The kids circle him, eager for approval or allowance, or maybe just a glance in their direction. You suppress the urge to hand him a tranquilizer with his slippers. Instead, you return to the kitchen, where you pop your own daily dose, disguised as a quick trip for extra salt. The little pill does its work, dialing down the panic just enough for you to brave the next act. Dinner itself is a production worthy of a stage. Grace is said, dishes are passed, and you do your best to referee the clatter of forks and the clashing of sibling personalities. There's small talk about school and work, neighborhood gossip, and the rising price of groceries. You field questions with a calm that owes more to chemistry than character. Inwardly grateful every time someone asks for seconds, it means you did something right. Midway through the meal, your mind wanders. You recall the magazine article about making home a haven, with glossy photos of wives whose makeup never melts and husbands who never grunt. Your reality is a little different. Lipstick smudged, roast slightly overdone, children negotiating trades of green beans for extra dessert. Still, the illusion must be maintained. Smiles are currency, and silence about your real feelings is golden. After dinner, the family migrates to the living room for television, that great anesthetic of the era. You tidy up, hands moving on autopilot, cleaning plates and scrubbing pans while the theme song of I Love Lucy echoes down the hall. The kitchen, once bustling, is now your quiet sanctuary, a place to catch your breath. Let the pill work its magic, and try to remember if you ever actually sat down today. You peek in on your family, husband dozing, children mesmerized by black and white antics, peace reigning over the household, for now. You head to the bathroom, remove your makeup, and stare in the mirror at someone who survived another day. Tomorrow, it all starts again. For now, you savor the brief, tranquil hush, part home, part hope, part daily dose. The magazines say a happy marriage means looking your best and being available. The reality? You're wondering if hysteria is contagious, and if maybe the cure is hiding in your medicine cabinet. Nobody talks about it, but everyone's thinking the same thing. Is this normal? After the kids are in bed and the dishes are finally done, you steal a moment in the bathroom to check your reflection. The advertisements say you should still look glamorous at this hour, but your mascara has migrated, your hair is listing to starboard, and your only real accessory is a faint look of exhaustion. You dab on a little more perfume, not so much for romance, but as a sort of olfactory armor. If you can't feel alluring, maybe you can at least smell mysterious. Back in the bedroom, you try to remember which magazine offered which conflicting advice. Always say yes. Say yes, but not too often. Say yes and mean it, or at least fake it convincingly. If you're not in the mood, perhaps it's nerves, or worse, a failure of womanly duty. The articles are full of dire warnings. Don't let your husband stray, don't let yourself go, and above all, don't let anyone know you sometimes wish you could just go to sleep. You wonder if other women feel this way, or if they've all discovered a secret to marital bliss that didn't make it into the latest issue of Good Housekeeping. There's no hotline for, is this supposed to be enjoyable? Or help, I'm too tired to be glamorous. Instead, there's the hush-hush sisterhood, code words swapped over martinis or whispered in the kitchen. A headache. My nerves. The baby kept me up. Sometimes you think these are just synonyms for I can't tonight, and I'm not sure I want to. Meanwhile, the culture of the era, movies, books, advice columns, hums in the background like an off-key lullaby. Sex is everywhere and nowhere, a thing to be achieved, measured, and checked off a marital scorecard. You're told it's essential for happiness, but nobody says what to do when happiness is as elusive as a wrinkle-free bedsheet. You begin to suspect that the only people truly excited about marital relations are the advertisers selling miracle creams and the doctors writing scripts for relaxation aids. Speaking of doctors, it doesn't escape your notice that their solutions to feminine malaise are always conveniently located in a bottle. The cure for nerves, restlessness, or general discontent usually comes with a long, scientific-sounding name and a promise to restore vitality. You start to wonder if maybe the cure for your secret suffering is just chemically induced indifference, or at least a good night's sleep. It's not that you don't care about your husband, or that you don't appreciate the quieter moments together. Sometimes there is laughter, genuine affection, a memory of why you chose each other before life became an endless parade of chores and obligations. But sometimes, all the love in the world can't drown out the fatigue, the unspoken anxieties, or the resentment that bubbles beneath the surface. resentment at being expected to be everything, always, and never let it show. Still, you play your part. Lipstick, lingerie, a smile that's practiced enough to almost feel real. You find comfort in the fact that you're not alone, even if nobody says it out loud. The world is full of women staring at the ceiling, counting cracks and sheep and wondering when, exactly, wedded bliss started to feel so much like work. So you take your place in the nightly ritual, reaching for a little helper if you need it, faking a yawn if you don't. You hope tomorrow's magazines have new answers. But for now, you just close your eyes and let sleep, or something like it, carry you away. In the end, the real secret might be that almost everyone is faking it, and that's the most normal thing of all. Parenting in the 1950s is a mix of strict schedules, pop quizzes, and discipline you'd get arrested for today. Kids are expected to be clean, quiet, and wholesome. If they're not, well, the pediatrician's got something for that too. You start the day with a mental checklist worthy of a military campaign. The children rise at dawn, hair brushed, shoes shined, clothes pressed, and faces scrubbed so pink they might pass for peaches. Breakfast is eaten with napkins on laps and elbows off the table. Or at least that's the goal. The radio blares perky tunes in the background, but it's no match for the sound of a fork clattering or a sibling whispering a forbidden joke. Eyes narrow. Manners, you remind them. We're not raising animals. Though, judging by the number of sticky fingerprints on every surface, the animals are winning. Schedules are everything. School, chores, piano lessons, scouts. Every hour of the day is accounted for, and God help the child who lingers in their pajamas past 8 a.m. If anyone dares utter "I'm bored," you have a list of tasks ready that would put any camp counselor to shame. Children in the 1950s are expected to be self-reliant, respectful, and, most importantly, invisible when company comes. The phrase "children should be seen and not heard" isn't just a quaint saying, it's a marching order. And yet, kids will be kids. Someone tracks mud through the house. Someone else forgets their homework. The baby swallows a marble, and for a fleeting moment you consider swallowing one too. The solution, at least according to the experts of the day, is clear. Discipline. Not gentle reminders or timeouts, but real consequences, sometimes a swat, sometimes a grounding, and always a stern talking to that makes you sound suspiciously like your own mother. But there's a modern twist to child rearing. The pediatrician. Cough? Rash? Won't sit still? The doctor always has a remedy, usually in liquid form, and suspiciously bubblegum flavored. Hyperactivity? He's just energetic, the teacher says, but the doctor nods knowingly and writes out a prescription for something new, promising it will make Junior more manageable. The drug cabinet becomes the backup parenting plan, filled with cough syrup, tonics, and tiny bottles with labels longer than your patience. Your friends swap stories about whose doctor is the best at solving problems. Someone always has a tale of a miraculous improvement, like the Johnson boy down the street who, after a few spoonfuls of calming syrup, started coloring inside the lines and saying please to everyone, even the cat. Nobody mentions side effects, because in the 1950s, side effects are just the price of progress. Or at least, the price of quiet. It's not all medicine and mandates. You want your children to succeed, to fit in, to be better than you were. So you sign every permission slip, pack perfect lunches, and volunteer for every field trip even though the thought of chaperoning 23rd graders makes your eye twitch. You read them bedtime stories, teach them to say thank you, and hope they never realize how hard you're trying to keep the illusion of family harmony intact. Sometimes, late at night, you watch them sleep and wonder if all these rules and routines are making them better, or just making them anxious. You promise yourself you'll be gentler tomorrow. But tomorrow brings more spilled milk, more tantrums, and more reminders that even the best parenting plan can be undone by a box of crayons and a wild imagination. So you carry on, clipboard in hand, prescription at the ready, hoping that one day your kids will look back and understand that you did your best with what you had, a handful of good intentions, a stack of advice columns, and, when all else failed, a quick call to the family doctor. House pride is real, and so is the anxiety that you might be living in filth. Every surface is wiped down with Lysol. Every worry is wiped out with a sedative. The motto: a clean house is a happy housewife. And a medicated one doesn't mind the mess. From the moment you open your eyes, you're on high alert for dust bunnies and rogue fingerprints. The sun slants through the window just so, illuminating a trail of crumbs on the counter that might as well be a neon sign announcing your failure. You grab your sponge like a sword and attack every spill with the vigor of someone defending a besieged fortress. Soap and bleach are your armor. The mop is your scepter. If anyone doubts your authority, one whiff of ammonia will convince them otherwise. The morning routine is a choreography of chores. Beds are made so tight they could double as trampolines. Throw pillows are fluffed and rotated because symmetry matters, and the bathroom sparkles so fiercely that you consider issuing sunglasses to the family. The house must always be company ready, even if the only company is the mailman and a parade of imaginary guests invented by your anxious brain. If you had $1 for every time you wiped down the kitchen table, you could retire and hire a full-time maid, who of course you'd micromanage into an early grave. But house pride is non-negotiable. The magazines insist that a tidy home reflects a tidy mind. What they don't mention is that the reverse is also true. When your mind is a mess, the only way to cope is to scrub everything in sight until you can at least pretend things are under control. Yet with every passing hour, the pressure mounts. The scent of lemon polish becomes both a comfort and a warning. If it fades, it means you haven't cleaned recently enough. You check for smudges on the light switches, dust the tops of door frames, and polish the silver until you can see your own slightly panicked reflection. The vacuum roars across the rug like a judge's gavel, pronouncing sentence on every wayward crumb. Still, no matter how much you clean, it never feels like enough. There's always another mess. Sticky handprints on the fridge, dog hair on the couch, a pile of laundry threatening to overtake the linen closet. You suspect the family is in cahoots with the dust, secretly shedding skin cells and tracking in dirt just to keep you on your toes. You consider starting a new cleaning regimen. Disinfect at the top of every hour and again. If you catch anyone breathing too loudly near the windows, that's where the pharmacy comes in. After the third mop of the morning and the fifth wipe down of the doorknobs, you reach for your mind polish, a sedative stashed behind the spice jars. It doesn't exactly clean your thoughts, but it makes them a little easier to ignore. A quick swallow, and the edge of panic softens. Suddenly, a streak on the mirror isn't a sign of moral failure, just a smudge waiting for another day. Afternoon arrives, and the perfection parade continues. You light a scented candle, open a window for fresh air, and stand in the middle of your immaculate living room, wondering if anyone else feels this tired from simply keeping up appearances. You suspect they do. After all, the women in the magazines look a little glazed around the eyes too, and you know what's hidden in their medicine cabinets. By evening, the battle is over, for now. The house gleams, your nerves have quieted, and you reward yourself with a few minutes of sitting, careful not to wrinkle the freshly pressed slipcover. Tomorrow, it will all begin again, the endless war on dirt, chaos, and worry. But tonight, you can almost believe the motto, because in the 1950s, a spotless house may be a fantasy, but a tranquil mind, well, that just takes the right prescription. Church on Sunday, hats for everyone, and a sermon about contentment. You try to look pious while praying nobody finds your pill stash. At least the Lord forgives, even if the PTA doesn't. The day begins with a flurry of starch, spit shine, and shushing. You corral children into their finest patent leather shoes, white gloves, hair slicked and parted so severely they look surprised for hours. Your husband ties his tie with a sense of duty that suggests he's prepping for a court appearance rather than a worship service. You do a last mirror check, making sure your hat is perched just so and your lipstick hasn't wandered off during breakfast. There's something about a Sunday morning in the 1950s. Hope in the air, a scent of mothballs, and a low-level anxiety that today's hymn will be the one the kids ruin forever. You pile into the car, a rolling capsule of sanctity and stress, driving past rows of houses where families are going through identical rituals. At church, the parking lot is a parade of station wagons, Cadillacs, and competitive waving. You step out, clutching a Bible in one hand and a clutch in the other, secretly making sure your emergency nerve pill is still tucked inside, just in case the choir's a little flat or the sermon's a little long. The sanctuary is a pageant of Sunday bests. Pastel suits, hats like ships, and pews lined with parents, all hoping their kids will sit still for 60 minutes. You practice your serene face, the one you learned from the ladies in Ladies' Home Journal, as you settle in for an hour of inspiration, judgment, and hymnals with suspiciously sticky pages. There's a small comfort in knowing everyone else is performing too, singing with gusto, nodding with fervor, and sneaking sideways glances at anyone who dares cough during the prayers. The pastor stands tall and serene, delivering a sermon on contentment, patience, and the dangers of envy. You nod in agreement, all the while thinking of the neighbor's new curtains and how your roast is probably overcooking back home. He talks about the peace that surpasses all understanding, but you're more interested in the peace that comes in a little blue bottle back at the house. The double standard hangs over the congregation like incense. Public virtue, private panic. You try to focus, but your mind drifts to the PTA bake sale, the gossip about who forgot to sign up for altar flowers, and the lingering fear that someone, somewhere, will notice the dark circles under your eyes. Children are a ticking time bomb in the pew. You keep one eye on the pulpit and the other on sticky hands edging dangerously close to the hymnals. Every parent has an arsenal of distractions, quiet candy, picture books, or, in desperate times, whispered threats about what will happen if you fidget during the prayers. Miraculously, the sermon ends. You sing the closing hymn, feeling both relieved and exhausted, and join the parade of smiles and small talk on the front steps. After church, there's coffee in the basement, lukewarm, served in styrofoam cups, and flavored with small talk. You swap pleasantries and try not to reveal any cracks. If anyone asks how you're doing, the answer is always, fine, blessed, never barely hanging on by my cuticles. You discuss casseroles, compliment hats, and swap rumors about which family might be moving or whose teen was seen at the drive-in after curfew. At last, you gather your flock, climb back into the car, and let out the sigh you've been holding in since the second hymn. Back home, you kick off your shoes, peel off your gloves, and swap the pious smile for a more honest grimace. The Lord may forgive your flaws, but the PTA remembers everything. Still, at least for today, you made it through another round of Sunday performance. Pill stash safely hidden, faith mostly intact, hat only slightly askew. Your neighbor has a new dishwasher, your friend just got a convertible, and you're stuck with last year's blender. The solution? Jealousy, denial, and a tablet that makes everything taste a little sweeter. Keeping up with the Joneses isn't just a suburban cliché, it's an Olympic sport. You wake up every morning to the mechanical hum of Mrs. Edwards's brand new washer, the kind with the porthole window, chrome trim, and the smug look of something that will never eat another sock. On your side of the fence, your own machine sounds like it's chewing gravel and plotting an escape. You can't help but peek out the window, clutching your coffee and wondering how your neighbor affords it all. Did her husband get a promotion? Or does she just have better connections at the department store? There's a constant parade of status symbols on the block. Shiny new cars in the driveway, freshly painted shutters, and flower beds so well manicured, you suspect the children are being paid under the table to weed them. Even the dog next door has a better collar, rhinestone-studded and looking like he could audition for a Hollywood film. You try not to care, but there's a twitch in your eye every time you walk past the showroom-perfect convertible sitting where your family's station wagon used to leak oil. Invitations to coffee or bridge are minefields of comparison. Every house you enter is a showroom. Every conversation a polite battle of who's doing better. You sip coffee from delicate china and compliment your friend's new living room drapes while mentally calculating how many months' grocery money it would take to buy them. The compliments always come wrapped in barbed wire. Your curtains are so cozy, or I just love how vintage your kitchen looks. You thank them through clenched teeth, wondering if vintage is just another word for outdated. Of course, envy is a two-way street. You may not have the newest blender, but you do have a garden that produces actual tomatoes and a roast recipe so secret even you sometimes forget what's in it. Still, when the conversation turns to appliances, cars, or the merits of having a playroom just for the children, you feel the itch to exaggerate. Just a little. You drop hints about saving for something new, as if your life is just one step behind a miraculous upgrade. Everyone nods, but you all know the truth. Sometimes the only new thing in your house is the prescription bottle in the medicine cabinet. That's where the amobarbital comes in. The tiny pill that blurs the sharp edge of jealousy into a soft, manageable ache. Pop one before a garden club meeting, and suddenly Mrs. Wilson's pool doesn't seem like a threat to your sanity. Take another before the next PTA bake sale. And you might even manage to compliment the homemade lemon bars without choking on the words. The magazines say happiness is homemade, but you're beginning to suspect it's just a side effect. The race never ends. You paint the porch, sew new curtains, and arrange your living room furniture in the latest style, according to the ladies' magazines. You swap recipes that call for ingredients you can't pronounce, and you stretch your grocery budget just to keep up with the latest fad. Is it fondue? Is it pineapple rings? You lose track. The next day, someone else hosts, and the cycle begins anew. More compliments, more comparisons, and a fresh wave of envy washed down with a swallow of chemical calm. In the end, nobody really wins the game, except maybe the appliance salesman and your local pharmacist. You wave goodbye to your neighbor's shiny new car and remind yourself that the grass isn't just greener on the other side, it's probably plastic. Still, you smile, lock the door, and pop another little helper, confident that at least for today, you're keeping up. Or at the very least, you're keeping it together. 20 screaming kids, 4 pounds of frosting, and a clown with dead eyes. The only thing scarier than the party is the sugar crash. You sneak off to the bathroom for a moment, and maybe a little something for your nerves. The day begins with balloons, streamers, and a sense of dread that grows with every minute closer to the first knock at the door. You've spent the entire week planning, baking a cake that's mostly icing, wrapping presents with surgical precision, and organizing enough party games to keep the entire neighborhood entertained for exactly 17 minutes. The living room is a minefield of chairs waiting for musical redemption, the backyard rigged for pin the tail on the donkey with masking tape, and your kitchen table groans beneath the weight of sugar, sprinkles, and regret. The children arrive in a wave, each one bringing a new level of noise and a different flavor of stickiness. Shoes are immediately abandoned in the hall, coats flung like victory flags, and the volume climbs with every minute. You shepherd the guests toward party games, clapping and cheering, but mostly praying nobody throws up in the punch bowl. The clown arrives, late, sweating, and with a look in his eye that says he's already lost faith in humanity. His balloon animals wilt in the humidity, and his jokes land like lead balloons, but the kids love him, or fear him, maybe both. You're too busy refereeing a tug-of-war over the last party favor to care. There's a brief interlude for organized fun. Musical chairs turns into a contact sport, and a round of Simon Says devolves into a shouting match. You try to manage the chaos with the same calm you muster for PTA meetings, but there are only so many ways to negotiate peace between 7-year-olds hyped up on red dye number 5. The games end with a chorus of "I'm bored" and a mad rush for the gift table, where wrapping paper is torn apart with the ferocity of a pack of wolves. You finally herd everyone to the dining room table for cake, an event that begins with singing and ends with sticky fingerprints everywhere. The candles barely survive the gust of the group sing-along, but the real hazard comes after. Frosting, smeared faces, cake crumbs in every crevice, and a growing realization that the coming sugar crash will hit with the subtlety of an air raid siren. The air is thick with the scent of icing, birthday candles, and mild panic. You seize your chance for escape, announcing a quick check on the punch, but make a beeline for the bathroom instead. You lock the door, take a shaky breath, and pop a calming pill from the bottle hidden behind the towels. The hum of chaos muffled by the bathroom door is oddly soothing, almost meditative. You consider faking a stomachache just to stay in here, but the sound of distant shrieking reminds you you're the adult in charge. Back in the trenches, it's time for presents, more games, and, inevitably, someone crying because they didn't win Pin the Tail on the donkey. The parents begin trickling in, exchanging knowing glances and offering half-hearted apologies for their children's behavior, as if the wildness is a personal failing rather than a force of nature. You hand each child a goodie bag, mostly sugar, a sticker, and the hope of a quiet car ride home, and wave as the crowd thins. When the last guest is gone, you collapse into a chair, surveying the battlefield, frosting on the curtains, crumbs in the carpet, and a clown hat abandoned on the porch. You survived. The house is a disaster, but at least your sanity, thanks to modern medicine, is mostly intact. You pour yourself a glass of something strong, cut a piece of leftover cake, and wonder how many years you have until the next one. Probably not enough. After the kids are in bed, you relax with a glowing screen, some popcorn, and a mild sedative. Lucy's getting into trouble. Ed Sullivan's introducing a new act, and you're just grateful your show isn't being broadcast in color. The end of the day brings a hush to the house. A hush that's less about peace and more about exhaustion. The kids have finally surrendered to sleep after an hour of bribery, bedtime stories, and stern warnings about what happens to children who get out of bed after lights out. You tiptoe through the darkened hallway, careful not to wake the smallest one, and let out a sigh you've been holding since breakfast. Your reward, the family's prized possession, a boxy television with a screen the size of a bread box and a rabbit ear antenna that works best if nobody moves. Popcorn is popped on the stove, each kernel a minor miracle after a day of nutritious snacks and jello. You drop onto the couch with a bowl in your lap and your feet tucked under you, robe wrapped tight. It's time for your favorite nightly tradition, escaping into the glowing world of sitcoms and variety hours. The black and white images flicker in the darkness, painting shadows across the living room. The only light in a world that sometimes feels too heavy, too sharp, too real. Tonight, it's I Love Lucy. Lucy is up to her usual antics, scheming and blundering with the kind of chaotic optimism you can't help but envy. She gets into trouble, sure, but it's the sort of trouble that wraps up in 2-3 minutes with laughter, a hug, and a promise that tomorrow will be better. You laugh out loud, and it feels good, like exercise for your spirit, a small rebellion against the day's frustrations. For half an hour, you can forget about laundry piles and casserole disasters and simply root for Lucy to pull off whatever wild plan she's hatched. Next up is Ed Sullivan, introducing a parade of jugglers, ventriloquists, and crooners. You watch, half interested, half asleep, letting the soft drone of applause and polite laughter lull you deeper into the couch. The screen is black and white, but your mind is quietly coloring in the stories. Lucy's red hair, Ricky's bright bow tie, the sparkle of sequins on the roquettes. The ads in between are soothingly absurd, promising that a new brand of soap or detergent will solve all your problems for just 29 cents. The rest of the house is silent except for the occasional groan of the fridge or a pipe rattling in the wall. Your spouse may be next to you or already dozing in a recliner, snoring in rhythm with the TV laugh track. You both earned this escape. Even if you're too tired to talk about anything but tomorrow's shopping list or whether the kids are growing out of their shoes again, you reach for the pill bottle in your pocket, popping a mild sedative to ensure sleep comes quickly when the final credits roll. It's a quiet, modern luxury. The ability to drift off without a care, knowing that Lucy and the gang will still be there tomorrow night, ready to make you laugh all over again. You savor this little window of stillness, this black and white retreat from the technicolor chaos of the day. As the TV flickers out, you turn off the lamp, savoring the last taste of popcorn and letting your mind wander. Maybe tomorrow you'll solve a problem as quickly as Lucy, or face the world with as much bravado as the Ed Sullivan performers. Or maybe you'll just make it through another day, one episode at a time. You climb into bed, eyes already closing, grateful for the soft glow of nostalgia and the promise that, at least for tonight, everything looks a little better in black and white. You wake up groggy, forget where you put your keys, and start to wonder if you were always this tired. The side effects are listed on the bottle, but nobody reads them. In the 1950s, brain fog is just called Tuesday. You reach for your slippers and shuffle to the bathroom, tripping over a pile of laundry you don't remember leaving on the floor. You stare at yourself in the mirror and try to piece together how you managed to age 10 years overnight. Your eyes are puffy, your skin is pale, and you're not sure if you put on cold cream last night or if that's just residue from whatever the pharmacist swore would help you get some real rest. You yawn, try to smile, and blink a few times in hopes that the cobwebs in your brain will clear. Spoiler, they don't. By breakfast, the side effects are already working their magic. You pour orange juice into your coffee mug and put the cereal in the fridge. The children are loud, the toast is burning, and you are running on autopilot. You can't help but wonder, was this part of the plan? The bottle says may cause drowsiness, confusion, or changes in mood. But what it means is may cause you to forget why you walked into the kitchen, what day it is, or the last time you genuinely laughed at a joke instead of faking it. The fog rolls in and stays, a hazy filter over every task. Your thoughts are slow, syrupy, and just a little sideways. It's not a full-on sleep, but it's not true wakefulness either. A grey zone of functioning that makes you forgetful and oddly philosophical about whether or not you need to dust the ceiling fan. You catch yourself mid-chore, standing in the hallway holding a hairbrush, staring into space. You try to remember, were you heading to brush your hair, your daughters, or the dogs? Maybe all three. Throughout the day, your mind plays tricks. Did you take your pill, or are you just naturally this lethargic? You check the bottle, then check again. You leave reminders for yourself, sticky notes on the fridge, a string tied around your finger, an alarm clock set for random times. The kids think you're being whimsical. You know you're just trying not to forget where you parked your sanity. Even your body feels the difference. Your arms and legs are heavy, your mouth dry, your tongue thick as wool. You reach for words and they slip away, hiding behind a curtain of static. You nod along at lunch, smiling and laughing in the right places. But deep down you feel like you're running a full 2 steps behind every conversation. Your friends seem to manage just fine. But you know they're hiding the same little bottles, the same brain fog, the same moments of panicked forgetfulness. Nobody wants to talk about it. the little side effects that slowly become your whole personality. The magazine ads never mention the confusion, the missed appointments, the odd sensation that you're watching your own life from somewhere far away. At the doctor's office, you mention it casually, but Dr. Bob just nods and says, "That's normal." You walk away with another prescription and a fresh set of warnings that sound suspiciously like a rerun. Night comes, and the tiredness is bone deep. You crawl into bed, mind fuzzy, thoughts half-formed. You tell yourself tomorrow will be better, that it's just one of those days, that everyone forgets sometimes. But as you drift off, you wonder if maybe, just maybe, the real side effect of the 1950s isn't the pills, but the world that keeps insisting you're fine as long as you look the part. And so, brain fog and all, you close your eyes and let sleep, sweet, confusing sleep, do the rest. Every magazine cover promises calm, poise, and energy, with a little help from pharmaceutical sponsors. You flip through pages of impossible advice, daydreaming about running away to Paris, or at least to the drugstore. You start with the cover, a woman with perfect hair, perfect teeth, and a look of effortless serenity, holding a freshly ironed apron and surrounded by 3 well-behaved children and a living room without a single dust bunny. Her secret? The editors swear it's just this season's lipstick and a brand new vacuum. You suspect the real secret is tucked behind the table lamp, probably in an amber bottle marked for nervous tension. The articles are equal parts pep talk and passive aggression. How to please your husband in 10 easy steps. Spoiler. Step 1. Never talk about your own needs. Keep your children occupied the right way. It's always educational crafts, never locking yourself in the bathroom with a paperback and a cup of instant coffee. If you read closely, every page hums with a low, persistent anxiety that you're falling behind on some invisible checklist. Your house isn't sparkling, your waistline isn't shrinking, and your personality isn't nearly bubbly enough to pass the quiz on page 47. The advice columns are a study in contradictions. Feeling sluggish? Try our new doctor-recommended vitamin supplement. Turn the page, and there's an ad for an energy tonic promising to banish fatigue and fill you with vitality. And, if you check the fine print, a dash of pharmaceutical-grade pep. Then there's the bedtime page. Struggling to sleep? Our gentle sedative, available without prescription, will have you floating off to dreamland. You realize you're living in a world where you're supposed to be both tireless and tranquil, all while looking like you stepped out of a beauty contest and smelling faintly of lemon pledge. Somehow, the ladies' magazines know what's in your medicine cabinet. Amphetamines for mornings, barbiturates for evenings, and a parade of patent tonics and vitamin blends for the hours in between. The pages are dotted with testimonials from beaming housewives. Thanks to NRG tabs, I cleaned my entire home before noon and still had time to bake 3 pies. You wonder if they printed the disclaimer in invisible ink. Results may vary. Ask your doctor if your blood pressure exceeds that of a racehorse. Recipes fill the middle pages, promising harmony through gelatin salads and casseroles held together by condensed soup. Keep your husband happy with our 5-minute dinner, they say, and you wonder if there's a 5-minute solution for existential dread. Somewhere between the cake recipes and spring fashion tips, there's a single, hopeful article about taking time for yourself. It involves a bubble bath and a 10-minute nap, which you file under fantasy fiction. Then come the stories. Fictional housewives solving household crises with pluck, wit, and a bit of luck. Their children never misbehave. And if they do, it's cute. Their husbands are always grateful. And nobody ever runs out of flour, patience, or Valium. It's comforting in the way fairy tales are comforting. You know it's not real, but you want to believe, if only for a few pages. By the time you've finished the magazine, You're buoyed by the hope that maybe, just maybe, if you try a little harder or buy a little more, you can achieve this mythical state of perpetual calm. Or maybe you just need a trip to the pharmacy. For now, you tuck the glossy magazine under your arm, put the kettle on, and promise yourself that next month you'll finally master calm, poise, and energy, even if it takes a miracle or just the right combination of pills. Ever wonder why so many drugs were prescribed? It's all in the marketing. Pharmaceutical reps with slick hair and big promises convinced doctors that every housewife needed a pick-me-up. Science meets salesmanship. In the golden age of the white coat, your friendly neighborhood doctor wasn't just a medical expert. He was the gateway to a better, brighter, and more energetic you. Enter the pharmaceutical rep, armed with glossy brochures, free ballpoint pens, and a suitcase full of samples with names that sounded either space-age or vaguely Italian. Their job was to turn every physician's office into the front line of the latest chemical revolution, making life smoother, brighter, and more manageable, one prescription at a time. It starts innocently enough. Dr. Bob sits at his desk, sipping burnt coffee, when in strolls Mr. Baxter from Amalgamated Pharma, teeth gleaming and shoes so shiny you could spot your anxious reflection. Baxter opens his briefcase. No cash, just bottles of Miracle in capsule form. Doc, let me introduce you to our new tonic. Perfect for tired, overwhelmed mothers. Pure science. And it comes with a calendar and a steak dinner, if you're free Thursday. Dr. Bob, whose own wife is on her third cup of coffee and threatening to take up boxing, nods along. Soon, the medical journals fill with full-page ads featuring radiant women baking pies and vacuuming, always smiling, always content, and always helped along by a friendly pharmaceutical. The language is careful, soothing, and just a little bit condescending. Restore balance. Regain your spark. Be the woman your family deserves. If it sounds like the copywriter spent a week in a house with 3 kids and a broken washing machine, that's probably because they did. Salesmanship is everywhere. The waiting room, the back page of Good Housekeeping, even the radio is suddenly full of testimonials. After 2 weeks on Carmet, my life changed completely, chirps one ad, while another promises that just one daily tablet is the secret to feeling young again. Even Lucy on TV seems suspiciously perky these days. Nobody mentions side effects. The only thing more common than houseplants are sample packets. Doctors, not immune to the charms of a free lunch or the latest research buzzword, start handing out prescriptions with the same enthusiasm as candy on Halloween. A little something for your nerves? No problem. Trouble sleeping? Here's a solution that fits right in your purse. Need a pick-me-up before the school fundraiser? There's a pill for that too. The result? Medicine cabinets transform into tiny pharmacies, each bottle promising a shortcut to happiness. You, the patient, play your part in the script. You trust your doctor. After all, he's a professional and he's seen the brochures. When he tells you this new medication will help you keep up, you nod. The only question is whether you'll pick up the prescription before or after the PTA meeting. The magazines, friends, and even the friendly lady at the cosmetics counter are all talking about the modern solution for modern women. Behind the scenes, the pharmaceutical industry keeps the wheel turning. Sales reps log their miles, doctors tally up samples, and everyone, except maybe your liver, ends up a little happier, a little calmer, and just a bit more productive. It's a golden triangle of commerce, medicine, marketing, and the quiet hope that there's a pill for every problem, no matter how complicated. The prescription pad becomes a passport to a better life, or at least to a more manageable one. And while you're told it's science, deep down, you know it's also a very clever business. But in the 1950s, who's questioning it? Not the doctors, not the advertisers, and certainly not the housewives, too busy keeping up, staying calm, and trusting that whatever the solution is, it comes in a bottle with a smiling face on the label. By the late 1950s, Some housewives start to question the status quo. Book clubs turn into group therapy. Bridge night gets political. And people begin to ask, do I really need all these pills? The revolution starts quietly, with whispered doubts and overdue library books. It begins in the most ordinary places. The rec room, with its wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lighting, and slightly musty sofa, becomes a secret headquarters for suburban unrest. The bridge cards are out, but half the group is actually reading from a dog-eared copy of Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique, hidden beneath the table just in case someone's husband wanders in. Conversations drift away from recipes and PTA politics, inching into dangerous territory. Questions about fulfillment, happiness, and whether or not being calm and energetic all the time is actually normal or just a side effect. You notice it first in your friend's eyes. A little more spark, a little less willingness to laugh off disappointment. The polite chatter about casseroles is still there, but in between bites, someone confides, I feel like I'm living someone else's life. Another admits she forgot to take her pill that day, on purpose, and found herself feeling angry, awake, even hopeful. It's the sort of confession that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier, back when the only approved emotion was gratitude, and the only question was whether to serve the Jell-O mold with fruit cocktail or canned pears. As the conversations deepen, the old script starts to fray. Why are we all so tired? Why do we need so many pills just to get through the day? Is it possible that the problem isn't us, but the world we're expected to keep spinning? The idea is both terrifying and liberating. You and your friends start reading more. Books borrowed from the library, columns clipped from newspapers, pamphlets about women's health that don't just list symptoms, but suggest that the cure might be more than another prescription. The rebellion isn't loud. Nobody's picketing outside the pharmacy. Instead, it's a quiet resistance, built on overdue library books, frank discussions over gin and tonics, and a refusal to keep pretending that perfection is possible or even desirable. Book clubs swap bestsellers for banned books. Bridge night becomes a safe space for venting about husbands, kids, and the neighbor who brags about her new blender like it's a Nobel Prize. There's laughter, but now it's edged with honesty, and sometimes even a little rage. Even the doctors start to notice. A few of them, at least, become less enthusiastic with the prescription pad. Some women try yoga, others join walking clubs, and more than one group quietly pools money for a weekend away. No children, no chores, and, if they can help it, no little orange bottles. You experiment with saying no when asked to chair another committee. Not today to another request. And maybe I'll just be tired for a while instead of reaching for the next chemical solution. It's slow, it's subtle, but it's real. A shift in the air. A crack in the pastel armor. For the first time, it feels like you have a choice. Even if it's just what book to read next or what mask to drop. The Rec Room Rebellion doesn't make headlines, but it sets the stage for the next act. A generation of women quietly, stubbornly, beautifully deciding to ask for something more than a prescription and a pat on the head. The revolution, it turns out, starts not with a bang, but with a whisper, and maybe an overdue book or two. Conversations about feelings are strictly off-menu, but sometimes they sneak in between bites of meatloaf. You and your friends trade stories about sleepless nights and mysterious new prescriptions. Baby steps towards something like self-awareness. The family dinner table is supposed to be the calm eye of the daily storm, a place for good manners, hot meals, and polite conversation. The magazines say dinner time is for connection, nourishment, and setting the tone for the whole household. But if you listen closely, you'll notice the cracks forming in the foundation of routine. Sometimes, in the midst of passing the mashed potatoes, someone lets slip a truth. I barely slept last night. Or, I had the strangest dream after that new pill. The words hang in the air, surprising even the speaker. You glance around the table. Will anyone acknowledge the moment? Your husband raises an eyebrow. The kids roll peas around their plates, but you nod. You know exactly what she means. The truth is, almost everyone at the table is carrying some small burden. A worry about bills, a twinge of sadness, a memory of what life felt like before doing your duty meant popping a pill and soldiering on. Some evenings, friends join you for dinner, especially when husbands work late and children need distracting. These are the nights when the conversation is allowed to stray, just a little, from recipes and report cards. How are you really doing? Someone whispers over the clatter of forks. At first, it's met with nervous laughter. Maybe a joke about going crazy, but soon the stories start to surface. My doctor switched me to a new prescription, one confides, but I still wake up exhausted. Another admits she lost track of her pills and panicked, then realized for a few hours she felt more alive than she had in weeks. Nobody calls it mental health. That's not language for the dinner table, not yet. But the vocabulary is evolving. Nerves, the blues, feeling off. You discuss symptoms like any other ailment, headaches, sleeplessness, the sudden urge to cry during a cereal commercial. You don't dwell on it, not for long. There's still meatloaf to slice and a child attempting to hide peas in their napkin. But the simple act of naming the struggle, even in code, feels like an act of rebellion. The children listen, quietly, learning the art of avoidance. They grow up in a world where grown-ups rarely cry and never admit to feeling overwhelmed. They notice the pills, the doctor visits, the whispers behind closed doors. Maybe they tuck those memories away, to be revisited years later in therapists' offices or late-night conversations with friends who also grew up in homes where talking about feelings meant talking about the weather. Occasionally, someone pushes a little farther. Maybe we're not supposed to do it all alone. A friend muses, swirling gravy around her plate. The idea is met with a brief, thoughtful silence, then quickly brushed aside by a request for seconds or a reminder about the next school fundraiser. Progress is slow, after all, but even the briefest acknowledgement plants a seed. Next time, the conversation might linger a moment longer. After dinner, dishes are washed and leftovers packed away. The kitchen grows quiet, and you find yourself replaying the evening's snippets of honesty. It's not therapy, not by a long shot, but it's something. The next day, someone calls to check in, not about the recipe, but about you. How are you feeling today? The question is clumsy, but the intent is clear. You answer, I'm managing. And for now, that's enough. Change is slow, hidden in the everyday. But with each whispered story, each baby step towards self-awareness, the taboo cracks just a little. In between the peas and the potatoes, you find a little room for honesty, and the hope that maybe, one day, real conversations will be on the menu. While the housewives are popping pills, the men are chain-smoking, hiding in the garage, and pretending not to notice the existential dread. Spoiler. Nobody's okay, but at least everyone looks good in black and white photos. It's easy to forget, beneath the pastel curtains and the squeaky clean sitcoms, that the men of the 1950s weren't exactly thriving either. Fathers come home in crisp white shirts smelling of cigarette smoke, Old Spice, and the vague aroma of business lunch bourbon. The evening ritual is as scripted as any dinner party. Shoes off, tie loosened, and a beeline for the living room chair, where the newspaper doubles as a shield against both children and uncomfortable questions. The garage is Dad's sanctuary, a place where he can tinker with tools, stare into the abyss of the water heater, and nurse a beer in the quiet hum of solitude. Sometimes he pretends to be fixing the car again. Sometimes he's really just avoiding the chaos inside. If you listen closely, you can hear the static of a baseball game on the radio, the occasional clink of a wrench, and the soft sigh of a man who's supposed to have all the answers but feels, deep down, that maybe he missed a memo somewhere. Work is its own kind of pressure cooker. Your husband heads off each morning in a suit and hat, briefcase in hand, and a look that's equal parts determination and dread. The office promises stability, but delivers a daily helping of monotony, deadlines, and the subtle, or not so subtle, threat of being replaced by a younger, cheaper version. He jokes about the boss, the old ball and chain, or the company golf tournament, but underneath, you see the lines deepening around his eyes. He lights another cigarette and tells you he's fine. Back at home, the expectations are as clear for him as they are for you. Providers don't talk about feelings, or bad days, or what it's like to lie awake wondering if they're doing enough. He's supposed to be the rock, the problem solver, the head of the household, even when the household feels more like a leaky raft in choppy water. Vulnerability, that's for the movies, not the living room. You see glimpses of his inner life in the small things. The way he lingers over the sports page, the extra shot of whiskey on a Tuesday night, the habit of disappearing behind the shed for fresh air. He doesn't have a little orange bottle in the medicine cabinet, but his own coping mechanisms are as ritualized as your beauty routine. Chain smoking, quiet brooding, the odd weekend spent staring at the barbecue grill with an intensity usually reserved for rocket scientists. Sometimes, when the kids are finally asleep, he'll open up, a story about his own father, a worry about the bills, or a half-hearted joke about running away to Tahiti. It's not quite honesty, but it's a crack in the armor, a reminder that he's just as tangled in the expectations as everyone else. You share a companionable silence, both grateful for the moment and a little sad it doesn't happen more often. On the outside, everything looks fine, postcard perfect. The black and white family photos capture a world where the grass is always cut and everyone is always smiling. But even in the glossiest pictures, you can sometimes see the tension. A too tight jaw, a distant gaze, a hand gripping the armrest just a little too firmly. You know now that nobody's okay. Not really. The men carry their own burdens, just hidden beneath pressed collars and practiced jokes. So tonight, as the house quiets and the world slips into grayscale, you wonder what would happen if anyone ever said the truth out loud. Maybe someday, men will talk about their feelings too. Until then, the garage light stays on a little longer. The smoke drifts quietly out the door, and the existential dread is just another shadow at the edge of the perfect picture. What happens when you finally run out of refills? Do you face the world raw? Or just find a new doctor? For some, it's the first step toward change. For others, it's just a new flavor of denial. Either way, the story isn't over, and you're somehow still standing in the kitchen wondering what's for dinner. You stare at the empty bottle, little white label peeling at the edges, and feel a strange mix of dread and relief. The prescription that once seemed as routine as milk and bread is now gone, a casualty of forgotten phone calls or a doctor's new policy. You turn it over in your hand, as if a few more shakes might coax out one last tablet, like a genie in a bottle, but less magical and a lot more codependent. For a moment, you're paralyzed, wondering if you're about to find out who you really are beneath the soft focus of pharmaceuticals. The first day without your helper is just inconvenient. You're irritable, distracted, maybe a little sweaty. The second day is worse. Everything feels too bright, too loud, like the world has been turned up several notches and no one remembered to warn you. The kids' laughter is shrill, the neighbor's dog a personal affront, and the radio plays nothing but songs about heartbreak and rain. You find yourself pacing the kitchen, snapping at crumbs and considering the merits of becoming a hermit. Then comes the choice. You can try to tough it out, muscling through the anxiety and headaches and occasional urge to hide in the pantry with a box of vanilla wafers. Or you can do what's become instinct, call the doctor. Sometimes Dr. Bob just writes a new script, no questions asked. Sometimes you're met with raised eyebrows, new recommendations, or even a lecture about developing better coping skills, as if you haven't already tried every breathing exercise in the latest magazine. For some, the missing refill becomes a wake-up call. You notice that the world doesn't end if you're a little less calm, a little less productive, a little more honest. Maybe you start confiding in a friend, or you find a library book about nerves that doesn't end with a coupon for the pharmacy. You try herbal tea, yoga in the living room, or just taking a walk in the late afternoon, letting yourself feel things instead of pressing them down with chemistry. For others, running out is just a hiccup. There are always options: another doctor, another pharmacy, another friend with a cousin who knows someone. The ritual continues, but now it's tinged with a sense of weariness. You know the script by heart, but it's starting to sound flat. The thrill is gone, replaced by a nagging sense that maybe there's supposed to be more to life than chasing down the next dose. Meanwhile, the family keeps spinning around you, oblivious to the inner drama. Dinner still needs to be cooked, laundry sorted, kids wrangled into pajamas. You put on a brave face, but you catch yourself daydreaming about escape, a night in a motel, a day without responsibilities, a week where nobody needs anything but a few quiet moments of your time. And then something shifts. Maybe it's a small thing, a conversation with your husband that doesn't end in misunderstanding, a walk with your child where you laugh and forget about perfection for a while. Maybe it's just the realization that you survived a day without the safety net and the world kept turning. You might still miss the comfort of the pill bottle, but a tiny part of you wonders if it's possible to write a new ending. So you stand in the kitchen, clutching the empty bottle, and make a choice, maybe not a grand one, maybe just to keep going. For now, that's enough. The story isn't over. It never is. And as you stir the pot and set the table, you start to imagine what a different kind of tomorrow might taste like. You shuffle into the school cafeteria, armed with a jello mold and a 1,000-yard stare. The PTA president is planning the next bake sale. The vice president is crying quietly into her purse. And you're all wondering if anyone else brought something for their nerves. Spoiler: everyone did. The agenda says fundraising, but the subtext is, please let me sit down for an hour without folding laundry. The fluorescent lights flicker above the linoleum floor, casting a harsh glow over a sea of folding chairs and anxious parents. The meeting starts with obligatory small talk. How's your garden? Did you try that new casserole recipe? Wasn't the band concert just adorable? But nobody's really listening. There's a hum of exhaustion, a collective sense that everyone here is barely holding it together. The principal stands at the front, clutching a clipboard and a cup of burnt coffee, preparing to guide the group through another round of voluntary assignments that feel a lot like conscription. You scan the faces around you. Mothers with lipstick carefully applied and hairdos held in place by sheer willpower. A few fathers pretending not to check their watches. There's an unspoken competition over who looks the least frazzled. But you all know the truth. Behind every smile is a week of sleepless nights, forgotten permission slips, and late-night baking sessions for a bake sale nobody really wants. The jello mold sweats in its plastic wrap, symbolizing the shared anxiety of the group. Bright, wobbly, and on the verge of collapse. As the meeting drags on, the president enthusiastically lists upcoming events, field trips, teacher appreciation luncheons, and, of course, the dreaded bake sale. Each new item on the agenda brings a fresh wave of sighs and the telltale rattle of pill bottles being shifted in purses. You catch a friend's eye across the room. She gives you a look that says, "If they ask for volunteers one more time, I'm switching to whiskey." Eventually, the conversation veers off script, as it always does. The treasurer confesses that her youngest stuck a marble up his nose, and it took 3 doctors and a bribe of ice cream to get it out. The room erupts in laughter, the kind that's just a little too loud and a little too desperate. Someone admits to sending her kids to school in pajamas on picture day. Another mother, usually the first to sign up for everything, admits she accidentally forgot about her assigned cupcakes for last week's party. No one judges. In fact, these confessions are the real reason everyone keeps coming back. For a few glorious moments, the pretense drops. The meeting becomes a low-budget group therapy session. Someone passes around a tin of homemade cookies. There's a knowing wink as the tin makes the rounds, because the cookies taste faintly of something that didn't come from the pantry. Heads nod in sympathy, shoulders relax, and for a brief time, you all share the relief of knowing you're not alone in this parade of obligations and impossible standards. But like all things, the honesty is fleeting. The principal clears his throat and steers everyone back to the business of fundraising. Pledges are made, sign-up sheets are passed, and someone volunteers, again, to chair the next committee. You jot your name down, already mentally calculating how many nights of lost sleep this will cost you. As the meeting ends, you pack up your jello and exchange quick hugs and whispered encouragements. "We'll get through it, you promise, one bake sale at a time." You head for the parking lot, a little lighter than when you arrived. Not because the agenda is shorter, but because for 1 hour, you got to drop the act and be honest, if only in code. The next day, it's back to the grind. But you carry with you the knowledge that, beneath the lipstick and the aprons, every parent is fighting the same battle. The PTA meeting wasn't just about fundraising, it was about surviving. Together. And maybe, just maybe, next time, someone will bring stronger coffee. The phone rings off the wall. Sometimes it's your best friend. Sometimes it's Gladys from 2 houses down. Always ready to swap recipes, rumors, and medical advice with all the authority of a YouTube doctor. By the end of the call, you've learned 3 new casserole tricks and the name of a pill that's life-changing. Who needs WebMD when you have Mildred and her Rolodex of remedies? The telephone in the 1950s isn't just a tool for emergencies or birthday wishes, it's a lifeline, a confession booth, a round-the-clock advice hotline for everything from split ends to split personalities. You pick up the receiver, careful not to tangle the cord, and brace yourself for an onslaught of neighborly intelligence. The first words out of the receiver are rarely hello, but something much more urgent. "Did you hear?" You settle in, ready to absorb every juicy detail. The calls are never short, and why should they be? This is the golden age of multitasking by phone. While balancing the receiver between shoulder and ear, you're scrubbing counters, folding laundry, or chopping onions for tonight's casserole, recipe courtesy of last week's call. You nod and murmur at the right times. But your hands keep working, guided by muscle memory and the occasional gasp of disbelief. Gladys, with her encyclopedic knowledge of everyone's business, is more informative than the morning paper and twice as sensational. She knows who's getting a new dishwasher, who just painted their shutters cherry blossom pink daring, and who's been a little off since the last bake sale. She's also the neighborhood's unofficial pharmacy tech, always first to report when a doctor prescribes something new and exciting for nerves, aches, or that certain malaise. You scribble down recommendations in the margin of a grocery list. Try Dr. Benson for energy pills. Ask for the pink ones. Mildred says they're like rocket fuel. Every phone call is a trade. You give a secret casserole ingredient. You get the name of a pharmacy that doesn't ask too many questions. By noon, your list is a patchwork of recipes. Warnings: don't mix the blue ones with grapefruit juice. and unsubstantiated claims that Ethel hasn't aged a day since she started her new tonic. The best calls are with your closest friends. These are less about news and more about survival. How are you holding up? Is code for, are you as close to losing it as I am? You vent, you laugh, you share stories about hiding in the pantry for a moment of peace, and always, always exchange advice about which doctor has the best bedside manner and the most generous prescription pad. There's a special trust here. You can confess anything, knowing it will be met with empathy, or at least with a matching horror story. Sometimes the phone is a weapon in the war on boredom and monotony. A quick call can turn a dreary afternoon into a gossip-fueled therapy session, punctuated by fits of laughter and dramatic sighs. The phone tree is also a support group in disguise, an invisible web connecting you to a network of women who understand, better than anyone, that sometimes the best medicine is simply being heard. But it's not all camaraderie. The rumor mill can be ruthless. Say the wrong thing, and suddenly you're the main character in next week's phone call. Still, the benefits outweigh the risks. You gain wisdom, community, and the reassurance that no matter what's going on behind your own curtains, everyone else is faking it too. You hang up the receiver, ears buzzing, heart lighter. The casserole is in the oven. The pill bottle is on the shelf, and you know just who to call if tomorrow's chaos gets the best of you. Because in the 1950s, WebMD is just a wish. But the phone and the voices on the other end are always there, ready to offer a recipe, a rumor, or a remedy. Sometimes, that's exactly what you need. Between ironing shirts and filling lunchboxes, your mind wanders. Maybe Paris, maybe just the next town over. Anything to escape the endless cycle of chores. And have you tried these new pills? You picture yourself as a glamorous movie star until the oven timer dings and reality snaps back, wrapped in a cloud of meatloaf and mild sedation. The fantasy usually begins with something simple. You're standing at the kitchen window, hands in soapy water, watching the neighbor's dog dig up another flower bed. You imagine, just for a moment, dropping everything and stepping onto a train bound for anywhere but here. Maybe you'd take nothing but your purse and a silk scarf, leaving a note on the counter. Gone to find adventure. Back for supper, maybe. It's the kind of thing that would shock the bridge club and send the PTA president straight to the fainting couch. Your daydreams are pieced together from magazine spreads, movie matinees, and the snippets of gossip swapped over backyard fences. Sometimes you see yourself strutting through the streets of Paris, cigarette in hand, hair perfectly tousled, surrounded by artists and poets who never ask about dusting schedules or school fundraisers. Other days, the fantasy is quieter. A little cottage by the sea, mornings spent reading novels, afternoons napping in the sun, and no dinner that starts with opening a can. The fantasy shifts with your mood. Some days you're a famous author, penning witty columns for The New Yorker from a smoky Manhattan cafe. Other days, you're a Broadway star, tap dancing away your worries under 1,000 sparkling lights. The details don't matter, it's the escape that counts. For a few precious moments, you are someone else, bold, unburdened, and gloriously unconcerned with whether the floors are sticky or the jello has set. Of course, reality is always waiting in the wings. The oven timer goes off, the dog barks, or a child appears demanding to know where their left shoe has gone. Your glamorous Parisian alter ego fades, replaced by the practical housewife who can whip up a tuna casserole and iron pleats into oblivion. You reach for your little helper, swallow it with a sip of afternoon coffee, and try not to think about how many more loads of laundry are still waiting. But the daydreams return, persistent as dandelions in spring. You let them bloom during the quiet moments, folding towels, sweeping the porch, waiting for the school bus to appear at the end of the block. Sometimes you plot entire escape routes, mapping out imaginary road trips on the back of old grocery lists. A weekend away at a lakeside motel, an afternoon at the movies, alone, with nobody asking for extra butter or another trip to the bathroom. Once, in a truly wild moment, you imagine checking into a fancy hotel, ordering room service, and eating an entire slice of pie without sharing a single bite. You never really act on these daydreams, of course. You have responsibilities, a family, and a reputation to uphold. Still, the fantasies are a lifeline, a reminder that you're more than the sum of your chores and prescriptions. In those brief reveries, you rediscover the woman you used to be, or might still become, funny, brave, occasionally reckless, and utterly unconcerned with casseroles. When the daydream ends, you smooth your apron, check the oven, and return to the rhythm of suburban life. You might never hop a train to Paris or headline on Broadway, but your secret fantasy life keeps you going, one small rebellion at a time. After all, a little escapism is as essential to survival as dinner on the table and a well-timed dose of whatever the doctor ordered. And who knows? Maybe tomorrow, you'll let yourself dream even bigger. Style matters, even if you're only dressing for the grocery store, the PTA, and a small nervous breakdown. You wear your best suit, matching gloves, and a pillbox hat, which is funny because you actually have a literal pillbox in your purse. That's fashion in the 1950s, looking poised on the outside, chaos and chemicals on the inside. Every outing is a mini fashion show. The ladies' magazines say you should never leave the house looking anything less than impeccable. So you treat even a trip to the market like a red carpet event. Stockings, heels, and a handbag that could double as a portable pharmacy. And of course, the hat. The pillbox hat sits at just the right angle, sophisticated but not showy, the last word in suburban chic. Jackie Kennedy may not have invented the look, but by now every woman with a secret stash of barbiturates in her purse is rocking some version of it. Your closet is a battleground between pastel dresses, structured jackets, and accessories designed to distract from sleepless nights and existential malaise. Getting dressed is a production. Slips, girdles, 3 layers of foundation, a spritz of something floral to cover the medicinal whiff of whatever karma is trending this month. You powder your nose, smooth your skirt, and step out with the confidence of a woman who can host a tea, referee, a sibling rivalry, and navigate a minor identity crisis before noon. The funny part is, half the accessories in your arsenal are more practical than pretty. Your handbag contains a tissue case, lipstick, mints, 2 emergency sewing kits, and a discreetly labeled prescription bottle. Need a pick-me-up for that mid-morning slump? Reach past the compact for a little something prescribed as needed. You marvel at how seamlessly the culture of looking put together has merged with the new pharmaceutical reality. Sometimes you wonder if the hat was named after the pillbox, or the other way around. And yet, there's a camaraderie in the costume. When you see another woman at the supermarket, her scarf just so, her lipstick immaculate, you share a knowing look. You both know the effort involved, the aching feet inside those smart shoes, the little voice in your head asking if you remembered to take your vitamin or was that your tranquilizer. Compliments are exchanged, on brooches, on shoes, on the radiant look of health that you both know has more to do with chemistry than sleep. You look lovely really means you survived another day. Cheers. Even the act of shopping is charged with competitive energy. You check out the window displays, mentally noting what's new, what's affordable, what you could recreate at home with a little thread and a lot of denial. You try on hats, giggling with friends as you find one that makes you look positively continental. Behind the laughter, there's relief. A few minutes when it's okay to just be frivolous, to pretend that matching gloves will solve everything. The truth is, fashion is a kind of armor. It shields you from gossip, from the prying eyes of neighbors, from your own doubts. If you look like you have it together, maybe you really do, the hat stays on, even if the rest of you is unraveling. Underneath the sharp tailoring and bright prints, you're a bundle of nerves and hope, hoping the next trend isn't just a new color, but maybe a new kind of freedom. By the end of the day, you slip off the heels, peel off the gloves, and place your hat carefully on its stand. The pillbox goes back into the purse, waiting for tomorrow. For a moment, you let yourself believe that style really does make the world a little softer, a little more bearable. In the 1950s, you may not have much control over the script, but at least you get to choose your costume. And sometimes, that's enough. So, you made it. You survived a day, maybe a lifetime, as a 1950s housewife, juggling casseroles, PTA politics, unruly kids, existential dread, and a pharmacy's worth of doctor's orders. If you're still awake, congratulations. That alone is more than most of the era's sleeping pills could guarantee. Tonight, as you drift off in your soft, climate-controlled bed, with no casserole burning and no one expecting you to vacuum in high heels, take a moment to reflect on the wild, quietly heroic resilience of those women who lived beneath the pastel veneer. Behind every perfectly fluffed pillow and flawless jello ring, there was a story, one full of fatigue, laughter, longing, frustration, and a whole lot of questionable medical advice. Because the truth is, history isn't just made by kings and presidents. It's built day after day in kitchens, laundry rooms, and quiet corners where people struggle and endure. Those 1950s housewives survived a world that offered them every solution except the ones they actually needed. They were told to smile, to take their medicine, to keep things tidy, inside and out. And somehow, with or without help from the medicine cabinet, they did it. They adapted, they rebelled in tiny ways, and, spoiler alert, some of them even made it out the other side with their sense of humor intact. So tonight, as you settle in and feel grateful for your own strange, imperfect era, maybe whisper a thank you to the generations before us. Thank you to those who powered through decades fueled by hope, stubbornness, and whatever happened to be in the little orange bottle that month. Thank you for proving that people can survive just about anything, even if the solutions are sometimes as odd as the problems. Because history may be a little wild, a little tragic, and deeply absurd, but it's also a testament to the fact that people are, above all else, resourceful, hilarious, and, despite everything, still looking for peace and comfort at the end of the day. Now close your eyes, let the stories fade, and enjoy the sweet relief of modern comfort, no prescription required. Good night.